Back in February last month, we hosted our first open call-in session where we posted up a link to a Skype meeting everywhere we could find it. This episode is part of the result of that session. It was a lot of fun, don't you think, Jamie? I had absolute blast doing it.
Yeah, I had loads of fun doing it. We've got a really great response to the first one. I'm already looking forward to doing the second one at the end of March. We're getting a load of content out of it, so yeah, I'm looking forward to having more at the end of the month.
If you called in last month and you did not hear your audio in this segment, don't worry. We'll be posting it up soon at some point in the future in whatever form that may be.
Yeah, I think we're going to maybe tag relevant conversations to the end of episodes, or in the case with this one that you just about listened to, it was a big flowing conversation that we didn't want to chop it up. It flows nicely. There's 4 of us in this conversation, so we thought it worked as an episode on its own.
Absolutely, and it was an absolute blast to do, so I hope you enjoy it. If you are interested in coming on and chatting with us for the next one, that is the 28th of March from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. GMT. Keep an eye out for the Skype link. We'll be posting it in our Discord. We're posting it on the Instagram. Make sure you keep an eye out for that and join in. If you like what you hear and you want to take part in it as well, please come on and hang out with us. It'll be great. This audio has not been edited or cut. That's part of the appeal, I think, is that we want to keep it as genuine as possible. So excuse the drop in quality, but there is a increase in authenticity, which I think is something that we hope you appreciate.
So here's the first offering from the first open calls session. We're going to be doing it once a month. We'd love to do it more than once a month, but we really just don't have the time. But remember that the conversation always continues on Discord and on the Instagram. So if you want to get in chatting with anything and you don't get a chance to call in on the Sunday, which will be the last Sunday of every month that we do it, then please hit us up in the Discord or just jump in to the Instagram and comment on a post or send us a message, and we will always chat about whatever it is you want to chat about there. If you want to get onto the show, then here's your chance. As Henry said, listen out for more details to come, but that'll be the time and the place. So come along and get involved.
28th of March, 4 p.m. GMT. We'll see you there, guys. Here is a nice big chunk of conversation we had last month with our friend Bordy and our friend Ari. Enjoy.
Stay hydrated.
All right.
How you doing, Bordy? You all right, pal?
I'm good, mate. You all right, boys?
Welcome to the Human Energy Field.
I feel energized. What you been talking about, boys?
Well, we were just talking about June there, but we were gonna hold off and have a proper conversation when the movie comes out, which I know is a while, but
yeah.
We'll see what happens with it.
Is it a film or a TV series? The new one?
A movie, yeah.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah, but it's
got a TV
just
show
even
coming out as well, Bordy.
There's a TV show coming out as well, is there? Yeah, I thought.
Yes, Jamie, they're doing a sisterhood TV show. They're doing a Bean Gesserit TV show as well. But the movie's going to be the big thing that you'll hear about, Bordy. That's the big one.
Do you know what? I've never seen the original Dune film.
Wow.
Yeah,
mate, you'd love it as well.
It's mad because
saying that you don't like True Detective, do you? So who knows?
Well, no, who knows? I'm strange like that. I watch SEAL Team 6 every week, but I don't like True Detective. It's like I remember when it came out when I was a kid, and I was like, "Wow, this looks amazing." Do you remember the figures?
I do, mate.
They were like between a Star Wars figure and an action man. They were quite big, and they always looked really cool. And then I just never saw the film as a kid. And then whenever I've seen clips of it growing up, it's always the bit with the big sandworms and stuff. When they're riding on the back of it.
I really rate it as a film.
Right, okay. You know what, mate? I'll watch it. I've always wanted to watch it, and I haven't.
It's unusual because, don't get me wrong, it's dated, but you cannot hold that against every film, can you?
But
totally there is a quality of casting in there which is hard to ignore.
I love Cal MacLachlan anyway.
Yeah.
I think he's amazing, yeah.
But Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart's in there, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and
tell you what put me off it, fucking Sting as well.
He's barely in it, mate, to be fair.
Tantric sex motherfucker.
Although, to be fair, if I'm going to get on board with any version of Sting, then, Gingerhead Future Sting is the one that I'm after.
Yeah. So he looks like a harlequin, doesn't he, with that like high ginger hair. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to watch it. I'm working away this week, so
I would, mate, because it's an easy watch and it's got some interesting aesthetic tones to it, as you would expect from David Lynch.
Yeah.
But it's pretty dark. I think when you watch it, it's dark moments.
Can I listen to that? Do you ever listen to that Effectively Speaking podcast?
No.
You ever listen to that? It's like a podcast that this guy does. He used to be a projectionist in the cinema down in like Folkestone, I think, or Margate, somewhere around that southeast coast. And he talks about the special effects in different films. Like they pick one film and he gets a special guest on, and then they go through that film and they analyze the special effects in it and rate it and stuff. And he's got like an Instagram. He's like a model maker as well. And they're always talking about Dune on that, how much to rate it. So yeah, I'm gonna have to dip in and watch it. He also does a cool podcast, Mad Max in Character, where every week they analyze a different character from Mad Max. It's fucking amazing. They started it in lockdown. They're up to like episode 50 odd or something like that at the minute. So one week they do Mad Max original, then they'll do the second one, then they'll do Thunderdome, then they do Fury Road, and then go back to the start again.
I want to hear the episode about Toe Cutter.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, they've not done the big characters yet. The first big character they did was Iron Bar from Thunderdome, but they're sort of ramping up. I think this week's character that they're just about to release is Master Blaster, so I'm looking forward to that. That'd be cool.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a bad boy. Yeah.
And
I want to hear one about the constable from Mad Max 1. You know, the geezer who runs the old rundown police station with the mustache.
Mate. Right, okay, check this. So not only did they do an episode with him, they interviewed him on the episode as well. It's so good. It's so good.
That is nice.
That Mad Max 1, man, it's underrated. I love that film.
Oh, mate, it's amazing.
The first one.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
It's so dark. It's so grindhouse. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty much a horror movie, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like, it's up there, isn't it, with them, like Straw Dogs, them sort of revenge Death Wish, the original Death Wish and stuff. I mean, it's obviously not as horrific as Straw Dogs or anything, but it's up there with that level of grindhouse, isn't it? That early 70s.
I know it's not the same theme, but I rewatched Dirty Harry for the first time.
Mate,
in about 10 years.
Yeah,
I forgot how good it is. I mean, it is really good.
Yeah, totally. So good, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, yeah.
There's
dark bits in that, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, very Judge.
Yeah. It is pretty dark, isn't it?
What's your thoughts on the Judge Dredd, the original versus the modern one?
Oh, I love the modern one, mate. Yeah, that remake, that one they did with Carl Urban, I think is fucking amazing. Really, really good. Me and Bolly went to see it at the cinema when it first came out, so we were lucky enough to see it in the 3D as well.
Oh, right. Sweet.
And it's the way they used the 3D was amazing. It really, when they're on that drug.
Yeah, it slows. That's
when that's when the 3D kicks in. Oh, it was so good watching it. At the cinema
so it's 2D until they take
the drug and then it goes into 3D. Sick. Yeah, it's really smart. It's really well done.
And Lena Headey's just a bad bitch, man. So I could watch her in anything.
Yeah, totally.
I think they were really brave as well. The plot they decided to go for with having it all set in the one building. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And I can totally understand logistically why they do it. And I think they managed to pull it off because a lot of common complaints I hear about it is that you don't see enough of Megacity, and you don't.
But how could you? How can you? It's too big, isn't it? It's too much. You can. Yeah. They tried to do it in the Stallone one, and it's just like watching Demolition Man, isn't it? It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't feel like 2000 AD.
No, I think it's too. The Stallone one is a bit too. It's a bit too American, I think.
Yeah, it misses the grit, doesn't it?
Hasn't it got Rob Schneider in it as well?
Yeah, it's like his sidekick. Yeah, it's like a comedy sidekick. Yeah.
Oh, mate.
It
ruins the tone, doesn't it?
I don't hate it. I mean, it's of it.
I don't hate it. I enjoyed it. Yeah. I went to see that at the cinema. We went, me, our kid and my cousin Wes went to watch it. And then afterwards, we snuck in to watch Bad Boys 2. This was in the old days, when there was no security between the cinemas.
Yeah, I remember that sneaking into screens. Yeah, I remember.
We watched that and then we snuck in and watched Bad Boys 2 afterwards. It was sick. It was a good night. Bad Boys 2 is underrated, actually. It's a good film.
Yeah, I've not seen the new one yet, man. But Bad Boys 2 is sick.
I noticed the other day it's on a streaming service, so I might watch it.
Yeah, let us know, man.
I tell you what else I rate as well in that sort of genre is Last Boy Scout. Have you seen that with Bruce Willis? Bruce Willis and I think it's Damon Wayans. And Damon Wayans plays like an American football player, and Bruce Willis plays this like cop, and it's about like underground betting and stuff like that. The first scene at the start of that is dark. It's like it's on an American football field and it's like raining, and this guy's like trying to get a touchdown. It's like pouring down with rain, and this guy goes tackling. Next thing, he pulls a gun out of his trousers and just starts shooting. And every time he's trying to tackle him, he just starts shooting him, and like scores his touchdown, like throws it on the floor, and then like shoots himself. It turns out he was being like held ransom by like a betting syndicate,
Wow.
And Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans have got to like investigate it. It's sick, man. It's really good.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's one of them. It's one of them films that like kind of disappeared. But yeah, Last Boy Scout's well good.
Yeah, it disappeared like a lot of the Wayans brothers' careers, right? I'm
Exactly.
guessing it was
Totally.
early 2000s, maybe
Yeah.
that film came out. Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
so.
it's probably earlier than that. But yeah. Totally. I agree with that.
Oh, and then Buddy, hit us up with some of your favourite cyberpunk movies.
Oh God. Do you know what I liked? You know what I really enjoyed? I've not heard a lot of people talk about it. Was that Altered Carbon TV show?
Oh, do you know what? I went to go and start watching it the other day because weirdly, when I was working through eBay and I saw the RPG, they've done a role playing game for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I thought, oh, I've never watched that, and I've now put it on my list to watch. So is it worth it? Is it?
I enjoyed it. I've said for a few people to watch it, and I've had sort of like mixed sort of reactions to it. Apparently, it's based on a set of books, and I've never read the books or anything. But
no.
And it's one of them ones that's got like a really complicated storyline. But the way they do, the way I thought they did, sort of like sort of not cyber reality, but the way, do you know, like when they're walking down the street in Shadowrun and you have all like the adverts come on and stuff, and the way they sort of all the sort of perception and stuff, and the way you can filter out the matrix and stuff that they did in it, I thought was really good. I think it does work. It's a good TV show.
Do you think it'll work well as a role playing game then?
Yeah, I think it would. Because it's pretty complex and it's got a lot of different stuff in it, and it's got a lot of different layers to it. Right. It's all about it's all about what they call the stack, which is like a thing that you have implanted inside yourself. So the richer you are, you can have like these memories implanted in yourself, so that you never die. Basically, you just get a fresh body implant the stack into your neck, and you just carry on living in a new form, in a new body, in a new shell. And then one of the stories is that someone's going around murdering these rich people and incinerating the stack so they can't be put back into somebody else.
Got you.
So basically killing
finishing them off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of cool. Like these sort of have these stacks, and they can transport them into these bodies that are sort of in waiting, that have all been like trained up with all these like super soldier powers and shit. So they like get transported into these bodies, and they come out and they're like basically like G.I. Joe sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's a good little story. You get Edgar Allan Poe in it as like a cyber character who owns this like hotel. So that's pretty cool. There's all little things in it. It's good. I enjoyed it. And the other thing it's not necessarily cyberpunk, but the other thing I've enjoyed is have you watched that TV show The Expanse?
No, but
people have been telling me to watch that.
Yeah.
Oh mate, it is sick. It is really good. That is one of the best, like, compared to like Star Trek and stuff like that, is one of the best space in inverted commas, like, sci-fi TV shows I've ever seen. It's really, really good. It's like gritty as well. It reminds me a bit of Original Alien in the way that maybe mixed with Total Recall, because he's like a colony on Mars, a colony in space, and then a colony on Earth, all humans, sort of like rivaling each other. It's really good. It's really well done.
Did you watch that Ridley Scott Raised by Wolves?
Yes, I did actually. Yeah.
Did I tell you the mistake I made with that?
Did you watch the last episode first?
I watched the last episode.
Oh mate,
honestly, right? I turned it on and I was like, "Oh, this is good." I love a show that doesn't pander to the audience. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but I was kind of picking up, who the characters were and what they were doing, and I was like, "This is bonkers, this." And then it ended, and I was like,
"Right, next one." Hey, what? That was him.
And I couldn't bring myself to go back to the beginning because I literally just watched the climax. So
yeah, I thought it was okay. Jen was watching it, and I kind of was doing something else and watching, and I ended up. I think I was reading, so I ended up putting my book down, and then we ended up watching it all.
I like the way, for what limited I saw of it, it had some kind of real like philosophical themes to it,
Totally.
About life and humanity and all that kind of stuff. And I think it looked so aesthetically similar to Prometheus style movies that I can imagine it existing in the same universe, even though it doesn't technically,
Yeah, definitely got that feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So even from the tech and the way the ships look and the displays and stuff.
Yeah.
It looked really good. Yeah. But I'll have to check out Altered Carbon and The Expanse, man, after.
Yeah.
And I need something new to watch anyway, so that might be the thing to watch.
What other cyberpunk stuff do you think that's out there, Jamie, that's worth watching? Because there was a lot in like the the sort of like late 80s stuff like Free Jack and stuff like that. It's absolute bobbins, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Emilio Estevez, not Cliff Richard, fucking hell. The guy from the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger. Yeah. Let's do it. That's what he says, isn't it?
I really like that. I think it's a cool movie.
I saw it when I was a kid. I went to see it on the pictures and remember not enjoying it. But you think it might be worth rewatching now?
I think so. I put it into this this little group of movies from that similar time period. Do you remember? I think it's called Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, with Emilio Estevez, the Stephen King one.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
That's amazing.
It kind of ticks cyberpunk boxes for me.
Yeah, totally.
And I think there's a cop one called Black Rain.
Well, yeah, the Yakuza one.
Yeah. Now I know it's not set in the future, but for me, the way it looks and the way it's shot and everything, that to me is a cyberpunk movie.
Good shout on that. Yeah, Michael Douglas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got bike gangs.
Yeah.
Like, dark neon signs in the rain, and it's very Blade Runner-esque or like Terminator 1.
Shout. Yeah. Good film, that.
It's brilliant. It's really good. The musical score is excellent.
Yeah, it's dark, isn't it? So all that corruption and shit.
And it's actually a good plot. It's a decent film.
Totally.
I love that. I really rate that.
That's got a good vibe. Black Rain, yeah. That's a good vibe for trying to catch Shadowrun, actually. I've never thought of that.
Shadowrun. Well, more cyberpunk than Shadowrun.
Yeah.
And I know we're beginning to split hairs, but then by default there isn't a lot of Shadowrun kind of stuff.
Nah.
Apart from what was that? Will Smith.
Oh, Bright.
Yeah. I mean, that might as well have essentially been called Shadowrun, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed that. I thought it was.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did enjoy it.
And it's unusual to see that mix of fantasy and sci-fi, and I'm surprised that a lot of other people haven't jumped on that.
Yeah, totally.
And done something else.
Yeah.
Because I think it looked great, and it, you'd think with the success of like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, somebody would be banging down the door to do.
Totally, wouldn't you? Yeah.
That kind of show, but clearly not.
What do you think of like Johnny Mnemonic?
I love the Johnny Mnemonic movie. I think it ticks so many of what I think are the classic cyberpunk boxes: monofilament kind of fingernails, Yakuzas, downloads, altered dolphins that are ex-Navy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
Everything in it, I think, is spot on, and I can totally get away with the fact, it's cheesy Keanu Reeves, and do you know what I mean? Like, I want my shirts laundered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's brilliant. To me, it's classic. Everything from I've used so many of those character archetypes in games I've ran. Who's that preacher guy?
Oh, Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren, and stuff like that. There's the game we were playing the other day, Henry, and Saint Thomas de Bruges is entirely influenced by Dolph Lundgren's character out of Johnny Mnemonic.
Sick.
I thought I recognised him.
Yeah,
definitely
sick, man. This big, well-built, wears a crucifix and really just batters people to death.
So, yeah.
But have you read the original story, the Johnny Mnemonic book?
I have. We can. Oh, what's it called again?
Oh God, what's it called? That one?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the short story's called. I was just about to say the Total Recall name, and we'll remember it for you wholesale, but it's not that, is it? But I have acted for a long time since I've read any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. I like how Johnny Mnemonic really kind of predicts a lot of the technology that we have these days. He's got the big VR glasses on, and he puts his gloves on, like the power glove. Yeah. And you see the CGI hands come into the CGI world, and it's really
now to me when they do the Matrix in that's to me what the Matrix always looked like when I used to play early Shadow Cyberpunk.
Totally.
And I think sometimes when they've messed with it now, especially later versions of Shadowrun, they've almost advanced the tech too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agreed with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I think there's something beautiful about having the vision of the dark future, but from an 80s lens.
Yeah, totally.
I want my cyberpunk to look like Blade Runner. I don't want it to look like I don't want it to be Black Mirror. Do you know what I mean?
That's why when I play Shadowrun, I stick to second, but then I have to make an allowance for the technology that we've got now that wasn't available then. So even though I'm playing second religiously as a system, I allow Wi-Fi and wireless stuff because otherwise it kind of doesn't make sense because we've got that now. So
But I mean, how much can you argue it makes sense, because you're talking about trolls and orcs and dragons and
True,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also, it's an alternate world, isn't it, where
Yeah.
things started changing in the 80s or whatever, or whenever goblinization was,
So
2015.
maybe you do. So maybe it misses that step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a parallel universe, isn't it? Essentially. Now,
It's the
I
same
would
as that.
prefer to play it with
that
plugged in, jack in.
Yeah.
Same, exactly. Like it's the same as when they did that Star Trek show, that new one, the shitty one, and it's set before all the other Star Treks, but for some reason they have holograms and like wireless things, and you're like, hang on, this is before 1960s. This is before Kirk. Why is there holograms?
I really tried to get into that, and I just couldn't.
I've tried it. Yeah, I've tried it. I've tried
so
it. But,
bad.
yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
Think of
You want to have that same thing with the tech, don't you? You want to be able to glom onto the world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I've kind of, when I've done it, that's what I've done. I've added that little element in. So like, it's like Paolo's been playing a hacker in the game that we've played, and I'll sort of say to him, "Oh, you're sort of walking down the corridor, and you've got that sort of level of perception where you can see these little nodes and stuff flashing up, so you can sort of go and you can inspect it. But if you want to go in further, then you have to hack in. You have to actually jack into something. But you can interact with like the coffee maker from where you stood.
How do you
do stuff like that?
How do you, as a Shadowrun, when you GM in it, right? So as a Shadowrun GM,
yeah,
how do you deal with the matrix side of it? Do you allow the hackers to go on a run on their own, or do you take the whole group in, or what?
So the way so the way I do it now, the easiest way to do it is like you say, Henry, is to have a hacker NPC. That's the downright the easiest way to do it. So when I play with my lad Connor, and he's like 24 now, I think, and I play with him, and he's three mates, and they're all the same age. They all went to school together. They've known each other since they were like, they went to nursery together, so they've known each other since they were like 2. And before lockdown, they used to come round every couple of weeks, and we'd play a game. There's some like actual plays on the Dungeon Punks YouTube channel of us playing it, and so their Decker has always been a character that I made back when I was a kid, like in like 92, I think, or 90, my first edition, called Death Bunny. He was a hacker that I had as a kid. He was based on one of the guys from Jesus Jones, and he's their hacker now. He's still the same guy.
There is something lovely, isn't there, about using a PC that you had from an old game.
Yeah.
So all they do is they ring him up. This needs hacking. I roll a few dice in secret, and then he gives them some information or whatever. But when we started playing with the Dungeon Punks guys, Paolo specifically said, "I want to play a hacker," because he's really into cyberpunk. He's really into William Gibson and stuff like that. Yeah. So he said, "I want to play a hacker, and I want it to be called Count Zero." So I was like, "Cool, no worries."
Pretty class.
The rules for hacking are really complicated. So I know you're not about complicated rules, Paolo. So what we're going to do is we're going to simplify it. So basically, the way I treat it is that it's almost like he goes into this alternate reality, and like the ice looks like, say it's a security guard, it looks like a cartoon security guard, or a like robot generated security guard, or say there's a little bit of ice that's doing a patrol. It's like a little, almost like one of them little Star Wars mouse droids, but it's got like a little flashing light, and it drives around. And I sort of get him to do it as the other PCs are doing things. So he's not on a side mission, and he can interact with them if he needs to via, the technology that they've got, just to make it so it's not one person on their own doing something for an hour.
Yeah.
While the other 4 sat round. Do you know what I mean? So I try and make it so it's like interactive to the scene, if you like.
Yeah.
And then
it's
if he
tricky,
wants
it's tricky, isn't it?
It's hard, isn't it? Yeah. Because if you look at the original rules, you have to draw up a grid, and you go, right, well, roll to go from there to the main grid, right? And then roll to go from the main grid to the next node. All right, well, you didn't pass that node, so you're gonna have to, and you're a bit like, fuck me, come on, let's make it a bit easier than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to do it. I don't know what you think, Jamie. That's the way I've been doing it, just because it's easier for me and the players. But
to be honest, I used to run Shadowrun 2 a lot, and I used to kind of say, look, it's better if nobody plays one, know. So when I'm saying keep it the NPC, and I don't have to worry about it. I have in the past created a situation where the hacker is the one who's actually leading the kind of dive, but
Yeah.
the other players can have a secondary login.
Yeah.
So they appear as kind of, they're all in. So the entire group goes into the web and plays out. And the hacker's obviously like the kind of leading the charge, but everybody gets to go along with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a nicer way to do it. And then everybody's in it, and it becomes a little kind of side quest, if you will, where everybody enjoying that separate environment. And then when they come out, that's when the hacker has to deal with real reality, and everybody else can get their proper guns back out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I would prefer to just not deal with it, and it's rough because I think it's such an iconic part of Cyberpunk and Shadowrun that it seems weird that it's really hard to integrate into the average gaming session.
Yeah, the only other way you could do it is to literally have a separate session in it with the hacker or the decker even, and do it as a separate session outside the game. That's the only other way to do it, isn't it?
It'd be all right if you had 2 GMs, isn't it? But then
totally. Yeah, yeah. It's the same way. It's the same way.
Game brewing.
Yeah, it's the same when you do Astral, in it as well. It's hard to do if someone's going to go deep Astral and try and do that kind of stuff. It's kind of hard to integrate that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a thing with and I know we're going slightly off topic, but with World of Darkness games, there's this thing where it's written in all of the originals, the character should have a prelude, right?
Yeah.
And it suggests that the GM takes each character on their own and runs them through like a mini adventure to kind of like a episode 0 with each character. And I'm like, even back in the day when we were allowed to sit in the same room, who's got time to do that?
No, totally.
You want your mates around and you want to get started in the game straight away. The GM's not going to take an hour out or half an hour out for each character. And imagine if you've got 5 players.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what's funny you say that, because that podcast that I rate quite a lot is Twin Cities by Night, which is a World of Darkness podcast, and they've done some Delta Green side games on the side, right? And what they did was they got a GM. They did 1-to-1, so a GM and one of the players, and they did side quests for each of the players to establish their background.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like 4 or 5 players, and then they brought them all together as one team. So they did side quests for each of them, and then brought them together as a cohesive team. And it's so fucking. And then they drop them into a situation in the main game that the players who were vampires created in this tower block, and then these other players that are them have then got to go and investigate that thing that they caused as players. It's so like multi-layered thinking. It's so good.
You see that it's like the vampire game that we played. It would have been lovely to do one-on-ones with everybody first, and then bring everybody together. But you're adding extra time, aren't you? And extra, and it's just such a hard thing to do. And I mean, the payoff, that you get, especially from listening to it like that, listening to these shows and then bring them all together, it's worth the reward, isn't it? But it's just so hard to organise.
Yeah, it'd be cool to do though, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
cool. And the only thing we've got at the minute is time anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's easier doing them. There's not many benefits to online gaming versus real gaming.
Yeah.
But I think being able to just pick a perfect time and log on and do a half-hour side quest or something.
Yeah.
It is,
it's one of them, isn't it?
You've got the time. Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's definitely been one of the things about the lockdown thing is I've gamed more in lockdown than I have for years since I was a kid. Because it's the only time I've had time to do something, because you can't say, the missus can't say, oh, let's go out for a meal tonight or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to go, I'll go and sit in the garage for 2 hours. you read a book or whatever.
I know what you mean, because I've had to kind of rein myself in from wanting to start too much or agree to too many, because before you know it, you can be on all the time because, like you see, you're sitting around. But yeah, it's a weird one.
We did 2 hours or 2.5 hours last night playing that Esoteric Empires with Brendan for Full Metal RPG, and that was cool. We've been playing that for a while. So,
what end game engine is that? How does that work? Tell us.
You know what, mate? I don't really know. It's a real basic. It's a real basic system. It's like a D6 system for your skills and stuff, and then there's like a D20 element to it as well. But I can't remember what the engine is. It's called Esoteric Enterprise. It's written by an English girl, actually.
Sad.
It's good. It's got one of them the rulebook's got a real good way of building the world in it. Yeah, a lot of dice rolls, but you can really flesh out a full world by just doing a few dice rolls.
What are your characters? Who are you playing?
So I'm playing. So my character was originally a bodyguard character archetype.
So humans then, yeah.
So he's a human. Well, he was. So he was a road. He was originally from Rhodesia, and he's like a big game hunter. But rather than being a big game hunter, he's like a esoteric big game hunter. So he goes and hunts like bog witches and stuff like that.
So that's the coolest character concept ever, man.
It was pretty sick. I was
gun or something. Big fucking.
Yeah. He's got this massive like bolt action Magnum 338 Magnum Lapore sniper rifle. Right. Yeah.
For shooting yetis and that.
Yeah. But he got killed, right? And there was a session where I couldn't play. He died. I couldn't play. So the other characters suddenly decided they were going to bring me back. So I get all these messages while I'm not playing. Yeah, we're resurrecting you. I was like, what? I was like, all right, cool. So I wrote a backstory about him, going into like the afterlife and feeling like he'd been left, like he'd left something behind. His life was incomplete, and he could feel this thing pulling him back in. And then they did a session where they sort of found this vessel body that had been ritually sacrificed, and then they brought my soul into this body, but they had to go and find it in like this other place, and that I was in this other place being stalked by what I thought was monsters, but it was these guys, and it was really cool. And then the next thing, he wakes up, my character wakes up, and he's in this Egyptian guy's body. He was like, he was like a 6'4" Rhodesian like beefcake, and now he's in this like teenage Egyptian's body covered in like sacrificial like symbols and shit. And he's like,
awesome.
So now he's a character called the Spook, which is basically like a monster or whatever. So yeah, it's cool. It's a really, really interesting system. Everything's geared towards you playing like the absolute dregs of society. It's based in like a esoteric underground where you sort of operate and sort of like help out ghouls and vampires and shit like that. It's cool. It's good. I really enjoyed it actually. It's been good.
So you're doing, how long are the sessions you do for that?
2 hours. We try and stick to like 2 hours.
You see, like I prefer those kind of length sessions as well, and I don't know if it's becoming more common, but you'll remember, like me, Paulie, the traditional long session for RPGs is what, 4-6 hours?
Yeah, 4 to 6 hours. Yeah, that's what I always think of. Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I played anything for that long.
We do, like when the Dungeon Punch guys play Shadowrun, we tend to do about 3 to 4, just because it's so hard. We can't dedicate a time every week or whatever. Yeah. So if we're going to play, we'll start at like 7 or 8 and then play until like midnight or whatever, just because it's hard for us all to get. And then we only play like once every 3 or 4 months or something like that. You know what I mean?
I think if you're not playing as often, that long session, you can get a lot done. And don't get me wrong, I think when all this is done and that, and get people around, if people are going to travel and and stay weekends or whatever, you go, all right, let's start and do a massive long mega session and play all weekend or whatever. Definitely. But I think when you're at home and on the laptop and whatever, I think 2 hours to me feels like you would sit down and you would spend that watching 2 episodes or a movie or whatever, and it just feels like a nice little chunk of time.
Especially after you've spent all day on Zoom calls and stuff for work or whatever.
Yeah.
To then spend another like 4 or 5 hours on the computer again at night. It's hard, isn't it? So I found it easy when I was working out on site full time, just going back to my apartment and then sitting down and saying, all right, then switch the computer on for a bit. But since I've been back in working from home or in inverted commas or whatever, and I'm doing like a lot of Zoom calls and stuff, it feels a lot more exhausting to. Weird to say it's more exhausting sat at a computer all day than it is walking around the building site, but.
No, it is. I've had days when I've been on Zoom calls from 10 in the morning until 9, 10 at night.
Yeah.
Like almost solidly, and it's exhausting. I'd rather have conversations with people for that time, and I'm an introvert.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It can be really draining, and especially if you're GMing as well. Like I recently ran a game over Discord video for some people, and me and Jamie were talking about it, but even when you're GMing in a room, you got to be picking up social cues. It's your brain's working all the time to be a GM. You're not really relaxed. But when you're GMing over video, it's almost like the engagement that you're putting in is doubled because you've got to try and read those cues based on these little screens with people's faces on and keep the momentum going and stuff. It's really exhausting. So more than 2 hours, I don't think anyone wants to do more than 2 hours over video, really.
Totally. I agree. Yeah.
But coming off the back of that, Jamie, if you were going to have a marathon weekend of RPGs in person, I'm down for that shit, man. Let's play 24 hours straight.
Yeah, man.
Invites are going out.
36-hour game. I'm down for that shit, mate.
And you know that game's got to be Beyond the Supernatural by Palladium as well.
Without a doubt. It'll be a mashup. Seeing as Palladium have gifted us with a system that crosses over many games, it'll be a Beyond the Supernatural, Advanced Recon, Ninjas and Super Spies, Rifts extravaganza.
Yes.
I just got a whole bunch of Rifts in, actually, that I've been working through. Yeah, like a big stack. I'm talking like, 50 odd books.
Yeah.
It just surprises me how much they churned out. And,
totally.
Funnily enough, I've got a source book for Ninjas and Super Spies that I'd never seen before.
Oh, really?
Called Mystic China.
Right.
And it's all like extra martial arts and loads of weird stuff and everything. And it's especially for Ninjas and Super Spies.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it before, so I'm going to have a read of that.
Considering how many martial arts are in the original book, that's quite an achievement to think of any more martial arts. Isn't it?
Yeah.
I can remember reading it as a kid and going, I want to try that martial art. Like stuff like, I think he's got like Salat and it's got all kinds of stuff in, hasn't it?
What was the player base like back in the day? Was there actually a big following for Palladium and Rifts and that kind of thing?
It must have been, because it was a big company and it's done a lot of games.
It has done a lot. That's what makes me think a sizable player base for the releases. Like.
Well, funny, there's a weird little nugget of knowledge here, gaming knowledge. Kevin Simbedia, and I might be mispronouncing his name, but nonetheless, the guy who owns and runs Palladium Games, that company was the first people to start bringing Robotech from Japan over into America.
Really?
And to start bringing out the VHS cassettes and stuff, because it had been shown on American TV, but it was shown entirely out of order. They weren't running the episodes in order. They were missing the end out and whatever, because they were just buying it and chucking it on, because back then, and you're talking about the mid to late 80s, it was just considered a cartoon for kids, and they thought the kids aren't bothered what order the episodes go in and stuff.
Totally. But
there was becoming this real kind of desire for this manga-esque kind of content.
Yeah.
And Palladium were basically getting the rights to put it all on American video cassettes and release it in America. Wow. And they were the push for that. And that's why they brought out the Robotech RPG, Invid Invasion and Macross 2 and all of that really early stuff. They did RPG source books for all of it, the Zentradi and Macross and Accelerated Program RDFs and all that big stuff. It's amazing. It's really cool. If anything, the RPG source books from that time period are essentially the DVD extras for anyone who's a Robotech fan. You just take the gaming out of it. It's got all of the original sketches for the mechs and all this kind of stuff.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that. I suppose Star Wars went the same way with West End Star Wars, didn't it? West End Games, in the way that they built canon for stuff.
Yeah.
That has now become like official, really.
It sort of kept it alive over the years.
Yeah. West End Games were definitely the house for bringing out, loads of characters that, as you say, have gotten into novels and the extended universe, which is, that whole mess now about what is canon and what isn't.
Totally. Yeah.
It's the same with Tolkien and Rolemaster, who did Iron Crown Enterprises, who did the Middle Earth role-playing game, MERP.
MERP.
They were essentially creating unofficial characters in Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? Like things like naming the other wizards and naming the other Nazgul and sort of weird stuff like that. It's like, it's extra Tolkien stuff Tolkien didn't write.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I watched them documentaries you recommended as well. They were good.
How good are they? I mean, I know they're a bit dated, but the narrator is got like, it's really good, solid narration. You get loads of, it's a nice balance between talking about the stories and talking about Tolkien as a writer.
Yeah, totally.
I think they're really illuminating, actually, even for people who only roughly familiar with it. You get a lot from it.
It's weird one of the things I found weird was the footage of the other interviews with other people. none of it seemed to be done at the same time.
No.
Like this, as you went through it, there'd be one guy who looked like he was being interviewed in like the 1960s, and another guy who looked like he was being interviewed in the 80s, and one in like the 1000s. It was really weird, wasn't it? Like a mix.
But it was nice to see, Christopher Tolkien speaking, and
totally.
the publisher from Unwin and stuff like that.
And the guys who did all the drawings for the covers and stuff.
Greg and Tim Hildebrandt.
Yeah.
They are amazing. Them. I mean, they did a lot of work for Dungeons and Dragons and stuff as well. And a lot of Dragonlance stuff, and I mean, they were amazing. Like, but they're good documentaries. They're really good.
Yeah, really enjoyed that.
You watch all four? Do you start with the Hobbit one?
No, I didn't watch the Hobbit one. I watched the other three, and then I haven't watched the Hobbit one yet.
Weirdly, I watched the Hobbit one last.
Right.
But I just watched it. It's in exactly the same style, but it obviously just covers the Hobbit instead of the Lord of the Rings. Which weirdly, I've never been as bothered by the Hobbit.
Totally same. Yeah.
But I guess it's one of the four pillars, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So, but yeah.
That did you watch that film that came out a couple of years ago? That cyberpunk film, that Upgrade, Jamie.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I don't know. I don't think I did.
No, that's kind of a weird one. It's probably worth.
When we were talking about cyberpunk games, the next one I was gonna bring up was the Ghost in the Shell.
Yes, the film. Yeah. I haven't watched it.
I really rate it.
What? You've never seen any of the Ghost in the Shell films? Paul?
No, I haven't watched the actual
I'm talking about the live action one.
Yeah. I've seen the TV. I saw the cartoon and I even watched the TV show, I think, as well. Yeah.
Standalone complex.
Yeah.
That's Standalone complex. That's the one. Yeah.
But I really rate the live action.
I don't stray into animated,
right?
But, Ghost in the Shell stuff is actually worth a watch, I think. Although I do love Scarlett Johansson, but I've not seen the live action film, I'm afraid. So I don't know. Is it it's just like a frame for frame reshot of the? It goes off on its own thing, does it?
I mean, it's a loving version. I think it treats it treats the original with respect, and there are definitely some scenes that are directly influenced from panels of the originals, but it's different enough. I think they've done a great.
I'm gonna
job
watch.
there.
I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that too now as well. Yeah.
The effects are just brilliant. Like, and the acting is solid. It never, in my opinion, it never falls into being cheesy.
Okay.
And I think that's there was a danger of that potentially happening.
Definitely.
But it just doesn't. So.
Definitely.
I would like to see more. Full new live action versions of some of that classic manga.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, can you imagine a Odio City 808 live action? Yeah, or Demon City Shitty Shinjuku.
Yeah.
There'd be some great ones. Because to me,
Neo Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah.
Imagine the scale of that. Fuck. I mean, I suppose they kind of tried to do it with Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
It's still not quite the same, is it?
Yeah.
Ari says he's going to try and join now, so we might have Ari jumping in as well in a sec.
All right, cool. I've got a message from Stephen as well. He's going to join us much later on when the time zone's better for him.
Oh,
nice.
Lovely,
Stephen the Dice.
Aye.
Yeah,
Nice.
Been chatting to Stephen, bud. He says he's been enjoying the episodes and stuff. It's nice to hear from him, man. Shout out Stephen if you're listening.
Yeah,
lovely. So I'm looking forward to getting that in later as well. But Upgrade, I watched Upgrade last year, I think, and the premise is kind of something that I'd roll my eyes a little bit at, but I actually watched it and I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, like the camera work was so good during the scenes where the computer takes over the geezer's body. Like,
yes,
the way they direct it all, it's really like tangible, like tactile filmmaking. You know what I mean? It's yeah.
Hi guys.
Hi Ari, how you doing, pal?
Hi mate, all right?
Good. You guys, how's it going?
All good, bro.
Good, man. Is it just me that is not getting any video for these joiners, or?
Actually, yeah. When I tried to enter, it said immediately that that video is prohibited or so. I don't know if it's something but I mean, with you guys, it obviously works. But I cannot even click on video here.
Skype. We can hear you, man. So it's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah,
man. So we're sorry, you guys were talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Just we want to carry on. Discussing
I think that film would be absolutely mind blowing, wouldn't it?
I just think there's such a mine of those classic shows that could easily be, even if Netflix picked them up to do TV shows of them or something.
Totally.
You're looking at Dominion Tank Police or Bubblegum Crisis.
Bubblegum Crisis, yeah.
Crying Freeman.
Is there a new Neon Genesis Evangelion out? Or I saw that there's something on Netflix, but I didn't even check if it's just the old one or if it's a new series or what is it?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think
I think it's the old ones. I think they put them all on. Yeah.
We started this conversation because I was talking about the Ghost in the Shell movie.
Yeah. Which one? The original one or
the newest one?
The live action one.
Yeah, and I really like it. And I was saying it's a shame that they don't turn some of the older manga entertainment titles into movies or TV shows.
It's funny with the Ghost in the Shell movie, if I can jump in there. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of the original one. Who's not? But I think it's still today, like as a comment on the genre cyberpunk and also post-humanism. I think it's up there with being one of the best content ever. Agreed. And with the movie, it's funny. I remember watching it in the cinema. I only watched it once, but I will definitely rewatch it now. I really enjoyed the aesthetics. I mean, I think it looked really stunning, and all what I say now also applies to the new Blade Runner. But I think content-wise, it didn't do anything that I keep it for a long time in my memory. You know, like there was nothing newly added to it. And especially in Blade Runner, I have the feeling it fails in actually trying to get back to an idea of the future from the 80s instead of trying to reinterpret it maybe from now. You know a little bit what I mean. And
I know exactly what you mean.
That was really a thought when I left. It's like kind of in this kind of nostalgia trap, you know, like there's just such a hard try of recreating this. It's also kind of funny, like this complete anachronism, you know, like you're trying in our time to rebuild like an idea of the future from the 80s. Completely absurd. You know, like.
I think it's really interesting. And it's interesting you mentioned Blade Runner 2049 because I think I agree with you. In some ways, it's brilliant and it looks beautiful. But in other ways, it felt me a little bit unsatisfied at the end.
Yeah.
It's you know what? I haven't watched it. I mean, I've got so much love for the original that I don't know. I didn't want to watch it. Is it worth watching?
It's worth watching.
Is it?
Right,
sure.
I think you should watch it. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it's eye candy.
Yeah.
And with it, I mean, Ghost in the Shell, I really need to rewatch it because I watched it only once. But I remember I had a similar feeling when it came out, that it was like kind of a similar problem I had with it, but that just looked stunning, but it was maybe like a bit superficial in that sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think you have to watch it just to enjoy it visually because
totally.
it is a beautiful film.
Bordy, have you seen any of Denis Villeneuve's previous films?
Give me a clue.
He's done Arrival, which was really good. He's also done Sicario, which I'm guessing you've seen.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so that would be my advice. If you're going to watch Blade Runner 2049, is to do your directorial research and watch Villeneuve's previous films first. Because the part of the love of the second Blade Runner that I have is the fact that I know who's directing it, and that's kind of why I enjoy it so much, because I really like Denis Villeneuve's directorial style. So if I just watched it out of nowhere with no context, I'd be like, oh, this film's pretty to look at and strange. But knowing that it's him and knowing the films he's done before made me enjoy it twice as much. So
I recently watched on Movie. Do you know this platform? Like it's a kind of art house streaming network. I don't know if it actually exists in the UK, but I think so. Whatever. But they showed a really old movie of him where I was super surprised. It's a kind of a political drama about a freedom fighter woman who went to jail. I don't want to say anything wrong now. If it was in Lebanon, I think in Lebanon. It's really untypical when you think of the more recent ones. I also don't even remember the name, but it was one of his first big movies. And it was really like no sci-fi. It was like kind of this realism, like this real story of this woman who was this kind of this political freedom fighter in, I think, Lebanon.
Incendies is it called?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've heard about it.
It was okay, a bit cheesy, but
I'm surprised at how many of his films I've seen actually. Now looking at it, that Prisoners is good, isn't it? With
Prisoners is well good.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal.
That one I didn't watch, but he seems to be like kind of the poster boy now for doing like remakes of all of our favorite sci-fi movies.
I mean I really like that Arrivals. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's a unique film. That is for sure.
That's really good. Yeah,
quite a burden this guy has now.
Yeah, but I was watching an interview with him about the Dune film that he's doing, or potentially two films. I'm not sure about that, but it's been his childhood dream to direct a Dune film since before he started making films. So This hasn't been dropped in his lap out of nowhere. This is his dream project.
Yeah, it's what he's been working towards all his life. That's
this is literally like the pinnacle of his career as far as he's concerned. So
I better be good then.
Yeah, and I'll suck it up, as RuPaul would say.
Yeah.
But by the way, when you're with about movies right now, after listening to your podcast, I watched finally Suspiria.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
I had it on my list since really long. It's like the thing is, I have hard times watching horror movies because my girlfriend really cannot watch it, and it's like so hard to find slots where you can watch alone.
Yeah.
And I really thought with this one, because it has kind of this art house appearance when you watch a trailer, and also have like amazing actors and so, I kind of thought I can lure her in, and then like after the first killing scene of this of the Olga, the dancer, this really crazy scene, she backed out and said, "Okay, I go to the bedroom, read." And then I watched it alone. I was blown away. I was really surprised how good the movie is. Like, because
Had you seen the original?
That was what I was saying next. Totally opposing your words. I love the original, and I also fucking love the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, see, there you go. It's polarizing, isn't it? It's so.
I was a bit disappointed when I hear you speaking about it.
Hey, man, it's subjective taste, isn't it?
I mean, it's of course polarizing. I know also a lot of people who think it's fucking annoying, but I have something for this. I mean, these Giallo movies, as they're called, these Italian splatter movies from that time.
Yeah.
I think there's really something to it, because I don't know if there's anything comparable from that time where there was clearly a art house approach to horror. I mean, there of course are other examples, but it was kind of unique, I think. The way it was filmed and still trying to be in the genre of being a splatter movie, and I think it has really a lot of qualities, the old one. And I'm also a big fan of prog rocks, and the soundtrack totally fills that.
I found that if I was going to enjoy any of the visual elements to what they were trying to do art house wise in terms of the horror and stuff, if I'm going to enjoy like the camera work or the cheesy Italian dialogue or the way they dub everything over or whatever, the soundtrack got in the way of everything else for me. I wish the soundtrack could kind of be somewhere else so that I could actually pick out all these other elements and enjoy them. So Ari, what other Giallo films would you recommend that maybe aren't as jarring?
Actually, I would just go for. I'm not a specialist. I don't want to say anything wrong about. But the other movies of Dario Argento are also definitely worth watching. On top of my head, there is Profondo Rosso, really great title, which I think just means the color red. And then another. Which one was it as well? Like he had also another one. I'm bad here right now recalling it. Yeah, but I mean, Dario Argento is the one big guy of that genre, and his movies they're all kind of. I mean, if you didn't like the original Suspiria, I don't know if you're getting convinced by them, but it's definitely worth having a look at it. I mean,
Bordy, have you seen the Suspiria remake?
So, cards on the table, boys. I am absolutely terrified of all horror films. So in our house, what we do is my missus and my daughter, all they watch all the time is horror films. So what I do is I'm just gonna go outside and go and do something else because I'm fucking terrified.
Walk the dogs.
Yeah.
Funny. No,
yes.
I was really like, I don't know. Do you also have this habit of when you really like the movie, the next day you kind of gonna download the soundtrack and listen to it and relive the movie? I was really like the next day I was walking around my flat and listening to the Tom York soundtrack and kind of got goosebumps thinking of the scenes, especially the last scene, like kind of this contrast of this really beautiful, sensitive song with the heads exploding. I mean, it was.
I think it's been quite a while since I was disturbed by a film, and the Suspiria remake really quite touched me in a way that it made me uncomfortable, and that was, I mean, that successful in that sense. Totally. Especially Olga's death scene, which you were talking about, is bizarre and amazing in all in one.
I think that what it does well, why it touches so much, is my theory is that it combines both these brutal scenes with highly aesthetic scenes. Like you're watching this beautiful dance and getting also forced to watch this horrible death, and the end is also the same. And I think that kind of for me creates some of the tension.
It's a technique Quentin Tarantino used, isn't it, with Reservoir Dogs, with the song and the ear removal scene.
Okay, interesting.
He has you he wants to get you singing along and dancing, and then all of a sudden it comes out, and the camera pans out. So yeah, I think I definitely think you're onto something.
He's got to be the world's biggest supporter, of Grindhouse and stuff like that. That kind of filming style. He owes everything to those kind of niche. He's such a sort of a student of the game, isn't he? That.
100%.
But then I guess you could also on the other side of that coin, he's not just he's also a champion of them. He's brought them back out and kind of made people enjoy his movies and then go deeper into his influences.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, especially stuff like Kill Bill. I mean, you start going down that rabbit hole with all of the influences and that, and you can you can watch some great stuff.
Yeah, totally.
A completely another movie where I was wondering or waiting when I listened to you guys talking about it, if some of you drops it maybe. I think a really big influence on the Suspiria movie is also Possession. Have you ever watched that one?
I haven't seen that one. No.
Put it on your list, guys. I really think you will love it. It's a movie by a Polish filmmaker called Andrzej Zulawski. Don't ask me how you write it. You will find it if you type in Possession. It's with Sam Neill, of all people.
Yeah. Oh, I love Sam Neill.
Awesome. And a really beautiful Italian actor. I don't recall her name. She was really kind of famous in the 70s. And it plays in Berlin in the 80s, in West Berlin, with amazing shots of the wall and so. And it actually is also filmed at that time. That's the difference to Suspiria.
Wow.
And it's not H.P. Lovecraft necessarily as a reference, but it has kind of a Lovecraftian feel. She is kind of creating breeding a tentacle monster in an empty flat in Kreuzberg.
Oh, wow.
It's difficult to explain because the movie is quite abstract, and it's mainly about a couple where the relationship really goes nuts, and it more and more comes out that she has like kind of this affair, but then also kind of creates this weird tentacle monster in this flat, and it's a really weird movie, but it's an absolute masterpiece, and. I think Suspiria takes a lot from that movie for sure. I'm 100% sure that he referred it, especially. And both movies for me, because I'm born and raised in Berlin. It's really I really dig the vibe.
Amazing.
Yeah. Have you guys seen In the Mouth of Madness with Sam Neill? That's another kind of Lovecraftian inspired horror film.
Very Lovecraftian.
Sam Neill's going a bit crazy. Like he's so good in that kind of unhinged role. Like
totally. Yeah.
So thanks, Harry. I'll check that one out. I did watch. I know that film's called Possession. I did watch a film called Possessor recently. Brandon Cronenberg film. That's come out last year, I think. So check that out, guys. That's like very. Bizarre, well, as you'd expect from the son of David Cronenberg's first directorial debut. Really weird. Like even from the very first shot of the film, it just makes the hairs on your arms stand up. It's just like the creepiest, weirdest film. It's really good, man. Possessor.
As we're on horror, I'm going to take a slight tangent, but sticking with this kind of horror theme. I just watched the documentary about the Cecil Hotel. I don't know if anyone else watched that.
Interesting. Yeah,
I heard of it, but I never watched it.
Yeah. Okay. What did you think of it, Jamie?
Yeah, dude.
Really enjoyed it.
Wow.
It's on Netflix. It's a 4-part show, an hour each one, and it basically goes into the background behind what was like an unsolved crime in LA in a hotel called the Hotel Cecil. And I remember seeing the video as a girl who acts very unusually in a lift. And it's a really spooky, and it was floating around on YouTube for years, and people not knowing what it was doing. So it goes into the background of what she was doing there and what happened to her and everything. And I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it.
I'm just going to get this video. Can
you? Sorry to interrupt. How's it written? Hotel Cecil?
Yeah, Cecil. It's very.
Okay, Cecil. Okay.
Yeah, it's trending on. I think it's Netflix.
Which video? Are you about to watch the video on YouTube? Because I'll put the link in the chat for us all. Hang on.
No, I'm not.
But have you watched it? Like,
I watched it. Jen and Fanilla were watching it, and it was. I thought it was weird. It came across as like. I don't want to spoil it, so I don't want to say, but I didn't enjoy it. But that's a conversation for me and you to have another day.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it for these guys, but yeah. Because Nate told me to watch it, and then I watched it, and I in like a group chat, and I was like, "What the fuck did you tell me to watch that for?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'd only watched the first episode, and I really enjoyed it." And then it kind of went downhill from there, and I was like, all right, okay, yeah.
I'm watching it now.
I think without spoilers, the one thing I can say that I enjoyed from it was it really taught me about some things I didn't know about that area of LA and the history. And the problem that they've got, and all about Skid Row and stuff.
Yeah,
so I think
It's fucked, man.
from that point of view, I thought that was entertaining in itself. And to kind of read about this, the past history that the hotel has and stuff.
Yeah, that was cool. That was all cool. Yeah.
I just think it was really good. It was I enjoyed, and I'm not one for watching any of this kind of CSI real crime bullshit. I'm not really into it. But I think following the journey of them kind of discovering what was going on. But again, without spoilers, I'm not entirely certain I agree with the conclusions.
That's interesting. Right. Okay.
So, that is another discussion. We'll talk about it.
Definitely. Yeah. Amazing.
Some things that made me head scratch.
But
that to me it's like watching horror, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
totally.
it's like watching a horror, but it's real, and it can be even more frightening because of that, I think.
Yeah. Totally.
So
yeah.
It's just unusual because it's not something I normally would watch. So
yeah, I can imagine. It's different, isn't it? So I watched they've released one recently as well about the Yorkshire Ripper, haven't they? Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I will watch that.
Yeah, again, that was a bit of a one that I didn't enjoy it because it seemed like it was done from an American point of view kind of thing, and it was like it wasn't, I don't know what the right word is, but it wasn't dark enough. It didn't go into too much enough detail. It was almost like, and then another woman got murdered kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen a couple of documentaries before. I think there was one on ITV a few years ago, and it was one of the kids from one of the women who got murdered. It was her going through and speaking to all the other survivors,
right,
and like the children of the people, and that was like had me proper in tears. You know what I mean?
What was the name of that drama they did about it? That was brilliant. Like a TV drama. Was it Red Riding? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, Red Riding. One that's
the British True Detective.
Oh,
it's man, and all that. Yeah,
it's really good. That that was suitably dark.
That's cracking. That is. I love Red Riding.
That felt like Life on Mars, but without the jokes. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I bet you can do a amazing Weird Side Jack, can't you?
Okay, now I finished watching this video on YouTube. Can you elaborate,
right?
guys?
Don't want to spoil it for you.
We should do a Red Riding watch episode, and try and run some sort of themed game and try.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to do, an 80s, 70s, 80s cop show episode.
Oh, amazing.
Hey, by the way, Henry, how did the second Troika session go?
Still setting it up, mate. One of the one of the perks of being a GM is that you get also saddled with the organizational aspect of the game, as well as the fact that you're actually writing the game itself. So I'm still putting it together, dude. But Saturday, the 6th of March, hopefully I'll have 3 or 4 players. So I'll let you know about that. I'll probably talk about it. We want to do a whole episode on Troika, don't we, to be honest, dude?
Yeah, we do, because I've just bought and read it as well. But before we leave TV, while I mentioned Life on Mars, you were a fan of Life on Mars?
Yes.
Yeah? I'm excited for the third one, the final part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
They're doing a third one. Is it in the 90s or something?
Well, from what I've read, and I could be wrong, but from what I've read, the creator has said it will be set in all 3 time periods. So it will be set now and the 70s and the 80s.
All right.
So it will kind of jump around.
Yeah.
And everybody's back on board. So it's great. I love it. I love Ashes to Ashes as well,
I haven't watched that. That's the one with the lady as the detective, isn't it?
Yeah. The lovely Keely Hawes.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I first watched it, Life on Mars, and then Ashes to Ashes went straight into it. And when it changed, I thought, oh, this has gone downhill. It's not as good. And the first couple of episodes, I thought, they're trying to recapture the magic and they haven't done it. And then actually, by the time Ashes to Ashes finishes, I think it's stronger than the original.
Oh, right. Okay. That's interesting.
So because it begins to become self-referential to Life on Mars, and you get the payoff for having gone through Life on Mars, and all of that feeling that you thought, oh well, this is just repeated. Am I just watching it? Is kind of makes sense. And then eventually, when they start bringing in mentions of the original, when it all gets a little bit, and then the conclusion to Ashes really starts to answer some of the questions that you have all the way through.
Right.
Because you can watch Life on Mars and be left really not knowing what it is about. Do you know what I mean? To intents and purposes. But Ashes to Ashes kind of starts touching on that, and then by the time this last one apparently will explain everything. So
cool.
That's a British series, or what is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just looked it up and never heard of it.
It's excellent. It's
BBC.
Yeah,
BBC,
and the soundtrack is unreal. It's got a wonderful soundtrack, and it's well acted. So I would definitely recommend Life on Mars.
Looks good.
It was very popular with baby boomers and parents because it depicts someone from our time traveling back for whatever reason into the 70s, and then there's a lot of callbacks to like Party 7 and
Fight 7.
Food, you know what I mean? Foods and drinks and things that people from the 70s, they always excited, fucking loved all the time. Yeah. So there's a lot of like British cultural references to that period that people who came from that time really liked. So it was a big hit in Britain when it came out because it had that kind of, and like the DCI Gene Hunt, he's a classic character, and I kind of half based my Nosferatu off.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, man, because he's just like a real beer swilling, fag smoking, kind of proper old school. What do you call him? The Gov, Jamie.
Yeah,
the Gov.
I love that. Yeah. So I really like the way that it's kind of, it gets a bit trippy. Like Sam Tyler will be in his hotel room or his bedroom or somewhere, and the TV will start chatting to him, and the little girl with the clown will turn and look at him or something, and he's like, "What's going on?" You know. So it's like you get the grounded kind of British 70s kind of dystopian vibe, like the muted colours and stuff, and then he's also got this kind of like magical element to it as well.
No,
worked really well, man. It reminded me of an RPG.
Yeah. I think it's played just properly. I think it's just spot on the way it's done.
Tonally, it toes the line very well. Tonally,
brilliant.
Concerning another series which I think is a little bit underrated, or not many people I heard speaking about it. HBO. I Know This Much Is True. Did you have seen it, one of you guys?
No, I haven't seen that.
No, what's that?
Never heard of it.
It's a short series on HBO. I think it came out like end of 2020 with Mark Ruffalo, and he plays like a double role. Like he plays his twin brother is paranoid schizophrenic, and it's about like kind of their relationship and how the twin brother goes worse and worse. And it's really from the acting crazy because the double role, his twin brother, is like weighs more than him, looks really kind of different. I don't know how they filmed that.
Yeah.
And it's a drama, but it has really like a weird dark undertone, and you just see like kind of this demise of this person and how the other brother, like the wealthy brother, kind of tries to hold him. It's like really dramatic, but it's so good. And the soundtrack is from one of my favorite ambient albums from Harold Budd, The White Arcade. And I was like, it's really like, what? Why do they choose exactly that soundtrack? And it was really like goosebumps. And it's hard to explain really the narration because it's mainly you just see these brothers and how the one goes worse and worse. And then you have like flashbacks of how they grow up and with this troubled relationship.
Wow. I might check that out.
I just put it on my list. It's a good cast as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like Mark Ruffalo. I think he's a really good actor.
Yeah, I rate him.
He was great in Spotlight.
Yeah, but also just generally like I'm impressed how HBO still kind of really holds the quality so high with their series production. Yeah, totally. And they switch really into this short series format where they have only like series one season with 6 to maximum 10 episodes. Sometimes it's nice, like these old formats where you go like really deep over 4 seasons, but it seems like they know that the people don't have the patience anymore.
Yeah. No, I've just added that to my list. That sounds good, that. Cool.
It's funny you should talk about people not having the patience anymore. I think that speaks to what we were saying earlier about how RPG games are shorter these days, and I think that kind of fits in with people's shorter attention spans in general.
Yeah. It's funny. I've actually before I came on here, I wrote 3 questions down, and that tackles one, which I had. It's like kind of what I ask always other people, like especially who are longer in the hobby than I am. How do you manage like all of kind of this kind of overflowing interest in 1,000 games, which we all of course have, and manage it time-wise? Like because of course, I mean, it's a stupid old question, but it's like I'm running now a Warhammer campaign, and I know it will take me probably till the summer or so, or longer. I don't know how long. And then next to that, I'm trying to squeeze in one shots, but then there are like 3 or 4 other games I would like to play. Like, how the fuck do you do that?
Do you know what?
I'm
We're
not
all
such
games
a big
masters
fan
here,
of one shots.
four of us
Like,
are
I like one
games,
shots, but I'm really like I like developing characters really long, and that's just like, I mean, you need to plan like 2 years ahead or when you want to play all of this stuff.
I think it's a really good question, actually. And what I've noticed that I've started doing, but not just the last couple of years, but over a long period of time, is I set myself a goal of how long a game is going to last when I set it up. I decide whether it's going to be, I'm going to play this for 4 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever. And I think when you have that goal in mind, then and everybody's on the same page, and you can start planning the thing you want to do after that, knowing fine well that you're going to finish. Because I think sometimes we can be guilty of just starting a game and that game just runs on and on and on until it peters out or people can't make it, or and I think sometimes you can miss out on a good climax by not setting the end. And I think an ending is there's a lot I read about creating fiction, and you need that ending, that closure, to feel like you've enjoyed the story. And I think sometimes when we played a long campaign and you are robbed of that climax, then it can be a little bit hollow. Whereas I think if all the characters die or finally succeed and are retired from the game, then for better or worse, there is an ending, and that helps to place the beginning and the middle in context.
Makes total sense. It's actually an interesting point.
It's about
so I think sometimes you can, even if you don't want to say, oh, it's going to be 10 sessions or 11 sessions, you can say, right, as soon as the party reaches Kislev and kills the king, then the game is finished.
That's exactly actually what I did. Because I mentioned it earlier before in the chat, but I kind of set it up quite freely. But they are dropped in the middle mountains, like on the other side of the empire, and they're all from Nolan. So it has the only overarching plot is that they want to get home.
Yeah. And I think then that's good, because I remember you saying it was almost like the Odyssey, and they can go to these weird places on the way home, but the end result is getting home. But make sure you don't fall into this kind of quantum leap trap of never getting home,
Exactly.
Because you want to be able to see progress towards the end, and then the players will know that they're on this journey. And as they get closer and closer, then we will feel the end. And even if the people are really enjoying the game, I'd say still finish the game, even if they're really enjoying it. Don't be lulled into what some shows do, is they overextend and do more seasons just because it gets popular and people are liking it. Sometimes you can end up ruining it,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. And I mean, with games like this, it's also like always nice, even if the game ends, they can always have cameos in later games you play. Yeah. I mean, I'm already planning to let. We played with the same group. We finished last year. I ran with first edition. I ran Shadows over Bögenhafen for them.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm already planning to have some cameos of their PCs showing up.
I think you strike a really interesting point here, and it's really valid. I think utilizing the games you've played to influence or become part of a greater universe that you play in later is so valuable. Because if you jump around from system to system, if you might play some Warhammer this week and then 2 weeks later you're playing Cyberpunk or whatever, that's fine. But if you are playing different games in the same universe, then you can draw on this patchwork that you've created to kind of make everything more vibrant and deeper as you go on, because you can end the game and start new characters, even bring new players in, and then
exactly.
But if you can use the things that you've created, then your game's just going to be better for it. And there are a lot of games that you can do that with, whether it's Rifts or World of Darkness or whatever, these games that there are a lot of crossover potential. But that sometimes can be a good thing to do, which is exactly what you're doing. But I think a lot of people don't do that,
I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling when you recognize how your world, which you over many games created, like kind of tangles up or like kind of meets each other. Like it's like a really fulfilling feeling which comes closest to taking part in the world building, even if you don't publish it. But it's kind of it's just like the best moments.
it can be a really hard thing to try and balance out playing one thing long enough to get that payback, that reward. It's like playing characters, because sometimes you want to take your character from level 1 all the way up to, I don't know, whatever, level 20, and there's a real joy in that. But then the downside to that is you're stuck with one character for that long, and you don't get to experience different roles. And
True.
so I think it can be really hard to get that balance right between sticking with one thing and being able to enjoy the pile of books that we have in the corner that we've bought and never played, because that's a shame to just play one thing all the time, even how good it is, because you could discover something else.
But exactly that came actually from one of my players saying, I hope some of us die this time so we can also play other characters. And I said, then go for it, mate. Just go for it.
He might as well be a troll slayer, just throw himself into death. But
unfortunately, I never had someone rolling up a troll slayer. I was almost asking someone, does somebody want to do it? Like, just take a troll slayer. I never had one in any of my games.
Yeah, it's. I read an article that somebody wrote about the Troll Slayer and the history of the Troll Slayer and its development through Warhammer, through kind of second and third. It was actually Brinton who wrote it. And he wrote it for, I don't think it went in, I think he sent it to Nate, and Nate was going to put it in somewhere or do something in the zine or whatever. And it never got done. But anyway, to get back to the point, it was really interesting to see the development of such an iconic character class, and also what it represented kind of from a point of view of society. That kind of post-Thatcherite Britain, that punk aesthetic, which is clearly in the Dwarf Troll Slayer, and the way that it kind of rose, and it arguably could be one of the most well-known characters of the old world by the time you get to Gotrek and Felix. That there are not many other characters in the old world who are as iconic as that. And then for that archetype to effectively disappear now as it's gone into Age of Sigmar. So it was really interesting. But yeah, the Troll Slayers are cool.
But it is really like a Warhammer invention, right? It didn't appear anywhere else similar.
No, I mean, I think when you look at it, the original influences will be obviously kind of Nordic berserkers and that kind of thing. But no, as a total product, it's unusual in the fact that a lot of the early Warhammer stuff is taken directly from Tolkien. So you have dwarves who love gold, who live in mountains. You have goblins who are evil. You have elves who live in the woods. It's all Tolkien. But this idea of this dwarf troll slayer is so almost anti-Tolkien. And I guess that's the point, because the troll slayer is a rebel from dwarf society, which is so rigid and regimented. And it is a uniquely British thing as well, I think, as being a uniquely Warhammer thing. But obviously those two are linked together because of GW's history in that time period, that British humour, that British influence, that
left wing
designers.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the early, characters who it doesn't take long to find that GW were having a laugh with the names.
Yeah, man. I mean, what do you think how it is for me being German reading that? Like, it's amazing. I mean, it's really like, I just try to imagine always the guys writing these books back then in the 80s and just pissing their pants while coming up with these German names. And I mean, when I run Warhammer, I always say like my strong German accent is the true Reichsspiel. I mean, that's how I imagine it, how they talk or not, like in the Empire, they talk with a crazy German accent.
Yeah, I think it's lost a bit. Warhammer's lost a little bit of that humor, and I think it's a shame because when you have these, Estalian bandolieros and Tillians and they're almost stereotypes, but they were done very well, and it was having that dark, almost Lovecraftian side to it, but then having that British, almost Tommy-esque humor on the other side was this perfect blend. And I think, unfortunately, it's lost that over the years. It started to take itself a bit too seriously.
Yeah, I think we wrote about it before, but and also with your post on Instagram, which was hilarious.
Thanks.
But I mean, they really try. You have the feeling. Also, many people say, "Hey, yeah, fourth edition really tries to go back to these roots, but it just doesn't work." I mean, it's really crazy. It's really like a try hard. Also, I read some of the modules just out of pure interest, and they really try to lean into this humor again, but there's something missing. I cannot even point my finger on it, but it's maybe also the art which is horrible in my opinion.
I think the most recent Warhammer Fantasy roleplay products are so desperate to hit the nostalgia buttons.
Yeah, that's everything.
That it becomes a parody of itself rather than a faithful representation. That they know there are some little iconic Easter eggs that people want to see, and they're just throwing them in there. And because the writers and the designers and everything don't have the same background and the same, feeling, it's like a bunch of guys trying to write something that they know nothing about, unfortunately. And what I'd have been more impressed if they just were bold enough to take it in a new direction and to say, look, these are the things that we're bothered about. But we're going to put in the elements of what we care about, not what people cared about 30 years ago.
But to be fair, Graham Davis and all these guys, they are still involved in it. Of course, the question, how much they have to say, you don't know, but they are.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can have people's names attached to it, and sometimes because they were responsible in writing the originals, then, know.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you say that, because we're getting back to the point when I entered the conversation here with the same problem also with Blade Runner, and so it's like kind of this desperate try. But as a bigger cultural problem of our time, like this kind of postmodern problem that there's nothing new. You can only refer to the past and try hard, and we're really like in a state where this is on a peak. This desperate try.
I constantly find myself moaning about the fact that the RPG industry just repeats games that already exist, and there's not enough fresh material. I don't need to see another version of Vampire. I don't need to see another version of Legend of the Five Rings. I don't need a new version of Cyberpunk. I don't need a new version of Shadowrun. I don't need a new version of Seventh Sea. I could go on, and I'm not going to. But many of the remakes of these classic games, Cult, Divinity Lost, all this kind of stuff, inevitably fall short of the originals, and they're just cashing in on nostalgia. Whereas if these writers are good enough, then create something new. Create a new. And there are people doing new stuff, and I recognize that. But when you come to the mainstream section of the RPG industry, for the books that you will find in Forbidden Planet on the shelves, or any big game store, Fanboy 3 in Manchester or whatever, predominantly would be Dungeons and Dragons, and then every game you see will be a modern reprint of a classic.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a shame for the industry that we're going through this kind of rehash, where everything is glossy, hardback, beautifully done, but lacks any real soul, because they've lost touch with what the original are. I mean, look at the new Cyberpunk. I'm not impressed with that at all.
Yeah.
Shadowrun's just gone downhill as it continues to progress. I mean, I'll get off my high horse in a moment, but I think the last time I looked at Shadowrun was kind of 5th edition, and the big book is huge and a beautiful book, but I don't mind rules, but to me it was too complicated.
Yeah.
And I just put it down. I just went, I'm not willing to upgrade from 2nd or 3rd or whatever to this, because it's just too complicated. I can't teach players to play this game because it's too complicated.
Because I don't understand it. So how can they?
But actually concluding that maybe it's just the right thing for GW to do something like Age of Sigmar. Maybe that was really consequent in a way. Even if I really dislike it, I'm not interested at all into it, but it's maybe a consequent way to get out of that problem which you described,
I think, we could talk for hours about why GW did Age of Sigmar.
It's also like
but to bring it down to one sentence, I think unfortunately they had to. They'd reached a creative dead end with Warhammer Fantasy, the old world, and it wasn't creating any money for them. And GW are, in essence, a business and are interested in making money. So that's why they've done it. And I think the inevitable backlash to that, and realizing that their money lies in nostalgia, which is what GW has really cashed in on the last 10 years particularly, has made them willing to go out and put so much money into a role-playing game set in the old world, rather than say, sorry guys, we killed that world, here's the role-playing game set in the Mortal Realms, which does exist, that Soulbond is out there, but it's not gaining anywhere near as much traction as the new version of Warhammer, because GW know when they're onto a good thing, and they want to reinvent what they've done, but it wasn't making them any money, and I think in time Age of Sigmar will have to disappear. I can't see it being a long-lasting thing, unfortunately.
But it is rather successful, right?
I don't know if it is, if I'm honest. Overall, in terms of what GW considers successful and not successful, I mean, anything GW produce outsells all other miniatures companies. So, from a bank statement point of view, yes, Age of Sigmar is successful because it sells, but GW can afford to make it successful and afford to make it look successful. Whether it exists, whether we're talking about Age of Sigmar in 20 years, the way that people are now talking about Warhammer and Rogue Trader and stuff, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, totally.
One thing I have noticed with Age of Sigmar and 9th edition 40k, this was a point that we picked up on in the Dungeon Punks Discord, which Bordy, you should definitely hang out in. It's pretty fun, but we never see you in there. But we were talking about how 9th edition 40k has been emphasizing the Marines versus Necrons, like the good versus bad. Very easily identifiable. At a glance, you can see what's going on. And then I went over to Age of Sigmar and realized that it's essentially the same thing. Now you've basically got good guys versus bad guys at a glance, and there's no more of this kind of cultural amalgamation that there was in the earlier editions, and like morally grey areas. They're very kind of delineated now. What you can see at a glance, how the two main armies that they're putting all their efforts in appear in terms of the color schemes as well as the design. Like Stormcast Eternals are essentially Primaris now, aren't they? And the same with the bad guys, and you've got the Necrons and the Tomb Kings or whatever else. So it's almost like they are adapting towards a bigger market to make money, like Jamie was saying, but not in any way that has any kind of personality to it. If Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy become so similar like they are now, they're going down the same path. It's almost like there's no difference between the two games anymore at all, really. Like they are is literally becoming a cash cow because they found a formula that works, and they're taking that formula and using it across both games now instead of having the two kind of actual different personalities, you know.
Well, I don't think it's too reductive to say that they just put Space Marines in Fantasy, because I mean that is what they did. And anyone who looks at it knows that. And why would you not take your most successful miniature line from 40k and put it in a fantasy game? I mean, you would. And I would argue that Stormcast is probably a very popular faction for people who play Age of Sigmar. So yeah, I mean, if you've got something that works, just repeat it, and that's all they've done.
It's weird though, because a few years back we had a sort of like a games day. Dungeon Punks guys got together and did a games day. It might have been Coram actually. It's that far back. Did a games day at Warhammer World, and we all set up in a corner and we all had our armies out and playing.
What's the difference between Warhammer and Dungeon Punks, mate?
There's a difference. So we had this table and we were playing away, and we looked over to the table next to us, and there's a bunch of kids playing, and we noticed they had like a reserved like sticker on the table, and then sort of like I think Nate or Kev glanced at it, and they were like, "That reserved sticker says John Blanche." And we were like, yeah, it does. And then so all these kids are playing away. The next thing, this fella comes over, motorcycle vest, ball and that. It's fucking John Blanche, and it's his kids playing on the table next to us.
Wow.
And he comes over, and I've got an Ultramarines second edition army that 40k second edition army that I play with dreadnoughts and everything. And he comes over and he goes, "Oh, I've not seen one of them for a while." I was like, yeah. And then we just started chatting to John Blanche for like 40 minutes about Warhammer.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was just chatting away with him, and he's like, "Oh, it's really nice to meet you all." And then his kids go off, and then they start getting these other fellas come over, these older fellas, and it's they start getting all this shit out and putting it on the table, and it's like Airfix model planes, ping pong balls on like flying stands. And they were just playing this game that they'd made up, and it was John. I can't remember who it was. It was like John Blanche, and I want to say it was. Oh, I can't remember who else was there, but it was like 2 or 3 of the old writers, and like a couple of other of their mates playing this game with like fucking unpainted ping pong balls on flying stands, like Airfix fighter planes, like Spitfires and stuff. It was fucking mental.
Wow.
Did
Some sort of Langlieres.
Yeah.
Tabletop or something.
Did one of you guys ever attended Boyle in Nottingham? This what is it called? Speaking out, Bring on Your Lad, I think is it called.
Oh yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Or Bring Your Old Lad. Yeah, old lad.
Yeah. It's like the
this old timer gathering in the War Games Foundry thing.
Yeah, the last time we did an event at the Foundry actually with like a Cormon, and the weekend after they were doing a bring out your lead thing there. But yeah, I have not been to one of the actual events.
It looks fun on the images, but I'm also thinking I'm too young for that. It's just really like these old guys there, but there's a lot of amazing stuff. Like on the images, it looks fun.
Yeah, totally. And if you go as well, they take you on a tour around the museum, and then they normally take you for a tour around the casting factory as well.
No.
Yeah, and they have all. Mate, honestly, if you rock up to the Foundry, but obviously you can't do that now. But if you ring him and tell him you're going to go, what's the guy's name who runs it? I can't remember what his name is.
The founder of the original founder of Citadel. What's his name again?
Joe, when you have an absolute mind.
Is it Brian Ansell?
Yeah, Brian Ansell.
Brian Ansell.
Yeah, so when we turned up to have a look at it for this event that we were going to do, so his missus met us there, and she's like, "Oh, Brian's out for the day, but like his son's called Marcus, I think he's oldest one. He's like, oh, he'll take you for a tour around," and we just turned up on spec. So he took us around the museum, then took us in the casting factory and showed us how they cast all the miniatures, showed us all the old molds, and he's like, "Yeah, take whatever you want, take some figures if you want, whatever." Yeah. So then we had an event there. And like Brian came down and did like a little talk and shit, and took everyone else around the museum and then round the molding factory and stuff. Yeah, it was cool. They really go out of their way to like treat people like so well. It's unbelievable.
I guess maybe you could argue that's the strength they've got that GW don't have anymore. You know?
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And it's a shame.
I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to pop off because my phone's ringing, but I'll speak to you all later.
Good to speak to you, man.
Mate. Good to speak to you, mate.
Hey, guys.
Bye, mate. Ciao. Before I'm also hanging off, I'm actually. Are you open for two more questions?
Yeah. I was just about to ask you what your questions were, man. So tell us.
Yeah, like one we already talked about. Then another thing is, I thought about after we wrote, I think shortly about confrontation in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I was really thinking about narrative-focused miniature games like Confrontation, Inquisitor, and how I'm referring really to my experiences with my boys here in Berlin. We are playing a lot with. How exactly do you prevent the games becoming competitive and less narrative-focused? Because I have the experience, we're all like kind of on the same page with my people here in Berlin that we kind of prefer way more narrative games, but with miniatures it always tends to be competitive at the end, and then you end up with like, okay, why are we actually doing the miniature game then? Because like you also reach the limit where you think then we could also play tabletop RPGs, and there's like really this where's the middle ground, you know, like, and what's the charm of actually playing more narrative-based? I mean, I have answers to that, of course, but I'm curious what you would say.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, a narrative skirmish miniature game is a hybrid between a role-playing game and a tabletop game. So to your answer to the comment of why are we not just playing an RPG, I mean, you are, but there are many RPGs that use tactical combat, whether it be Pathfinder or modern D&D, where you get out the map and you get out the minis. I mean, D&D 4th is very tactically heavy and might as well be a miniatures game half the time. Yeah. So I think with something like Inquisitor, I think it's okay to see it as you are just playing out the combat section of the adventure. And I've run lots of Inquisitor where I've done some talking sections and some almost like role playing for 10, 15 minutes. Then I've set the board up as almost to like set the scene. Then we've kind of played, and through the session as the miniatures are kind of being played on the tabletop. And then once the battle is finished, you can kind of drop back into narrative time and finish the session, or as you set up you reset the board up to be a different location and you play a series of little skirmishes. But I think the way that I would stop narrative skirmish games becoming competitive is to do away with any idea of points values, even if the game has them. Inquisitor, for example, has a ready reckoner for points. I think it's not worth even looking at because it was an afterthought that was put in there, and I think actually does more harm than good. And I think also is to make sure that the battles are asymmetric. So saying that, I've got 5 guys, so you have to have 5 guys, I think is kind of the beginning of the problem. I think you might say, well, look, you only have 2 guys and I have like 12 or whatever. I know you're not going to win. It's more about how you lose, or can you escape, or whatever. I think the goal is to have a mission objective or an objective for the session that isn't simply lining up 2 sets of troops and firing at each other. And I think that's something that Warhammer 40k has tried to do desperately over its many incarnations, to try and put a more narrative focus into the games. And they try really hard now with the 3 ways to play, narrative, open, matched. But I think traditionally what they've always tried to make the mission that you're playing have some sort of plot around it. And I think when it takes to Inquisitor, plot is king. That is that's the only thing that matters. So for me, that's how I would stop something being competitive. And I think almost the game has to be set up by a GM. It can be very hard for 2 players to turn up with gangs and fight each other, because you are looking for some sort of balance, because at the end of the day, you play a game to see who's going to win when you play a tabletop game, whereas we have a different mentality when we sit down and play an RPG, because we're not looking to win. So I think it's more about sitting down with the miniatures, assuming you're playing a role-playing game, not sitting down with the miniatures and thinking you're playing a game where there can be a winner and a loser.
That's a good point.
You think having a games master has something to do with that as well, as opposed to just player versus player, having a mediator?
I think so, yeah. I think an impartial games master can make very quick rules decisions that should be unbiased, can control NPCs in the environment, and just might provide for an overall better play experience in a narrative game.
I think as well that having a games master there, especially one particularly skilled at creating images in people's heads, and it's not just you pushing the base across the table and rolling some dice, actually saying, so he dives through the window, guns blazing, or his gun clicks, it's cold, like actually keeping the narrative in the players' minds while they're worrying about the rules keeps that narrative first, and keeping the story going first and foremost behind the mechanics and everything else that's kind of driving the story that you're making together. Because it's very easy, I've found, in Warhammer games, for people to just go, I want to move these guys here so that they can shoot these guys and win. And then having someone else describe it as if you're watching a movie or something will keep you in mind, there's actually the story going on. I'm creating something else for dramatic or cinematic effect, as opposed to just, I want to beat this guy's. I think a GM helps, for sure.
I really have the feeling that, at least from the games we play a lot, Mordheim does, in my experience, the best job in approaching this narrative aspect, also with mechanics, like that you feel like even without forcing or role-playing any scenes in there, you have a almost narrative experience while playing it.
Those are my favorite kinds of miniature games. The ones.
Yeah, for me too. Narrative. Like it's really like more times it became really like the game we play the most. I mean, we jump over to whatever other games, but this is really like the go-to game at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with Mordheim. I think it's an excellent little game, and I think part of Mordheim's strength is that a lot of the forces are very balanced. And
to some extent,
to some extent, obviously there are always going to be little elements that can be broken in any game. But I think the fact that Mordheim has a humanocentric approach rather than trying to encapsulate all of the races of the old world makes it a lot easier to balance, especially traditional Mordheim, where it's all about whether my band is from Nuln or Middenheim or wherever, rather than saying, well, I have lizard men and you have ogres, and it's very hard to balance from that point of view. But I think when everybody's human, to one degree or another, then it all becomes about armament and skill and tactics, and I think that's Mordheim's strength. And obviously I realize there are Skaven in there and all that kind of stuff, but essentially all the combatants share a similar kind of stat line to a lesser or greater degree.
I think there's a good reason for that. The game is till today has such a strong fan base. It's crazy.
Ari, mate, it'd be awesome once things free up a little bit if you come down to Warhammer World and we all meet up there for some games.
Yeah,
proper cool, man.
Yeah, that's anyways high on my list. I mean, Warmer World never did it, so it's high on my list definitely.
So what
How
was
easy? Huh?
what was your third question?
My third question is squeezing you for a suggestion for my campaign. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just gonna read out a scenario with a cliffhanger, and you're just gonna go on for me.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm curious what comes out. Listen. After barely escaping slavery in the night of horrors in the tangled woods of Sylvania, the adventurers reach the bleak village of Teufelheim. On the look for a place to rest and stay for the night, they find a rundown tavern with a landlord serving only a disgusting smelling gruel and rotgut liquor. On top of that, the only guest room is occupied by an ominous person going by the name of Ludger van Belling. The landlord offers the party to stay in the barn if they agree to clean the pig stable in return. Having no money and no other option, they without hesitation take the deal. After taking a goblet full of rotgut, of course on the house, the pigs turn out to be heavily mutated and living from just the same as the landlord and his guests' gruel and rotgut. The next morning, the party runs into Ludger van Belling, the only guest of the house, who turns out to be an initiate of Moor and vampire hunter from Ostermark. He offers guidance on leaving this horrible land, but only if the party in return agrees to spy on a nearby garden of Moor after sunset. The session ended here, and my question to you now is, what do the adventurers witness at the graveyard after sunset that the vampire hunter could be interested in?
Okay, right. My first thing is, have they seen the vampire hunter during the day?
Yeah, but only inside of this tavern. Like they come in the morning and he just sits there in the corner and has breakfast, and then they approached him obviously, and then got into a really awkward conversation with him.
Because
he looks like a child.
Right. My first instinct would be to have the vampire hunter as a vampire. That would be my first instinct, and maybe he doesn't have access to his previous temple or his previous church because he's now cast out, but he's still trying to do the good work of Moor and kill vampires, and maybe he was only recently turned, or maybe he's in the process of being turned, and really what he needs the help with is maybe overcoming this curse or kind of killing the vampire who created him, or however you want to treat vampires in your game. But my instinct would have been to make the mysterious sleeper upstairs a vampire. But if the characters have already seen him in the light, and that's impossible, then maybe you can do a switch on them and have him turned into a vampire the next session, and either need the player characters to assist him in getting rid of his curse, or then he becomes the enemy. But if you didn't want to go that way with either of the vampires, and he's asking the characters to spy on the Garden of Moor, then maybe it could be one of the vampire hunter's relatives who has been turned into a member of the undead, and he's looking for help in protecting them or saving them or something which maybe his fellow initiates might frown on, so he has to get somebody else to do it for them. It reminds me of when in zombie movies when you keep a relative in the house because you don't want to kill them, but it's very hard to, they are a zombie essentially, so you have them chained up in the shed or something. So maybe it could be something like that. The vampire hunter has either a personal secret or a family secret that that could be. So that would be my first instinct, and to play on this unusual character.
Interesting, great, thanks, Matt.
Nice.
I like you mentioned the rot gut and the gruel that everyone's eating, and even the pigs are eating that as well. So maybe they find that it's a kind of Soylent Green situation, and they actually come across the origin of where this gruel and this rot gut is being made, and it's actually something more sinister. Maybe there's vampire blood in the food or something else. So you mentioned the food enough for me to latch onto that as a plot hook.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with Sylvania in the lore, it's kind of you really can go many ways how you portray it. But I was like overall having more the feeling to keep the appearances of vampires are a little more subtle. They should show up obviously, but it's more subtle, and it's more like a really twisted land where, and maybe even the nobles are not all vampires. It's more like kind of Elizabeth Bathory, like like kind of this. I thought more in this direction, and then there maybe the nobles are aware of the vampires and would actually like to be vampires, but they're just twisted nobles who torture peasants and whatever. And then you have also the really interesting plot possibility with the Strigani, which are the using now not politically correct terms, gypsies in the Warhammer world.
Yeah.
And,
you could even have the vampire hunter, if he was a vampire, or even if he wasn't, you could have his lost love being a ghost, maybe in the graveyard, and the characters have to, find some way to lay her to rest or something.
I was going in a direction like this. It's kind of cheesy, but I mean it's also sometimes cheesy, sometimes good.
Yeah.
I thought they come there and then they witness a group of Strigani meeting up with a young noble guy coming on a horse, and he is like someone who lost a loved one, and with the help of these Strigani people does a ritual to talk to the ghost somehow. And they are. Then they have to decide if they're going to approach them without attacking them and just talk to them. They maybe find out that they're just not the bad guys, and the vampire hunter may be the bad guy. Blah blah. They kind of
I think
this moral.
It's a classic thing that whoever you expect to be the bad guys, great. Let's make them actually the good guys, and the good guys are actually the bad guys. I think that it's always fun to do that.
The good things with role playing games in general, like cliches, really often just work.
They're cliches are there for a reason.
In a movie you would be maybe annoyed by it, but in role playing games it's often just what really works well. Thanks guys. That was quite a good input. I really like. It's always I try to end this. I mean, it's all technique, I guess, but ending a session with a cliffhanger like this, where I myself don't even know. That was really the whole week. Now, okay, fuck, what are they actually doing there?
Put yourself on the spot. I like it. Testing your GM skills. It's good. So sounds like a great game, man.
Yeah, it does. You have to come back and let us know how the cliffhanger proceeds, whatever you decide to do, and how the next session goes. You can come back and ask us again for more advice about where to proceed from there.
And you are actually the secret nobility in the back of my game who controls the game.
We'll be your Illuminati. Yeah.
Hey, that's a good ending. I think I also have to attempt some cooking here for me and my girlfriend, and the weekend.
Yeah, Ari, mate, always nice to talk to you, man. Thank you very much for coming to hang out.
Thanks so much, guys. Listen, looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, cool. Nice one, mate. Have a nice afternoon, man. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers.